Hey ladies and gentlemen, Stephen here from Redolessence and welcome back to another video. Thank you so much for joining us today. And today I have the pleasure of being joined by my good friend Dave from the channel Scent Memories. I'm going to leave a link to his channel down below. And in today's episode, we're going to be talking about our top 10 favorite gourmand fragrances of all time. So make sure to stay tuned. Now, before I begin the video and we start the chat, I just want to mention that if you are a fan of fragrance-related content here on YouTube, please do consider supporting this channel by subscribing to it. All you have to do is click on the red button. Once again, Dave's information is going to be down below as well, so definitely make sure to check him out. And as the title of the video suggests down below, there is going to be a giveaway attached to this video, and it is going to be for a 5 ml decanter of every single fragrance that is on my end of the list. So 5 fragrances, 5 ml decants. All you have to do is just leave a comment down below. Make sure, of course, that you're subscribed to both of our channels. And also, please subscribe to the mailing list for Navitus Parfums. This way, whenever we do have future releases or special announcements or any sort of promotional activity, you'll be among the first to know. I would really appreciate that. And definitely, like I said, come back to this video in 1 week to see if you won, as the winner's comment will be pinned to the top of the comment thread. All right, everybody, so welcome back. Now I am joined by my good friend Dave over at Scent Memories. And in this video, we're going to be going over our top 10 favorite gourmand fragrances. Now, Dave, of course, since you are the guest of honor today, I would like for you to start. And of course, feel free to say anything else that you'd like to say.
So hi, everyone. So Stephen, thank you again for allowing me the opportunity to do another collaboration with you. It's always a pleasure when our paths cross, and I just always enjoy and love chatting about fragrances. So thank you again.
My pleasure, Dave, of course.
So for those of you who don't know, gourmand fragrances typically lean more in a delicious, sultry side. They make you want to cuddle up with somebody. They typically remind you of food. They usually have notes of like coffee, toffee, caramel, chocolate, those kinds of things. And they usually lean on the more delicious side. So I'm going to start off with my 5th fragrance in the 5 in my collection. Now, these are not the, like I always say, the best gourmands ever, just the ones that I have. So starting with the first one, or the number 5 one, and this is coming from the house of Tiziana Terenzi, and this one is Valorum. So Valorum, I really, really adore. This one is, the nose behind this one is Paolo Terenzi. This is all about the mandarin orange, the saffron. It dries into a really lovely cinnamon with passion fruit. There's a bit of vanilla there. It's a really, really delectable gourmand. It's incredibly delicious. It's seductive, but it's also very wearable. It's not overly sweet, and it's also a little bit on the more alluring side. So when people smell it around you, they go, what is that? And it's really, really delicious. This one is one that I just picked up this year, but it's easily jumped in my top 5. It's all about the passion fruit and those warmer, cozier notes of cinnamon and saffron.
So Valorum sounds fantastic. I mean, and everything you said, all of these edible notes, and every single note that you listed is edible. The vanilla, the cinnamon, the passion fruit, even the saffron. Saffron is used as a spice. It's edible. And it just sounds amazing. I don't recall if that's one of the ones that I've actually tried. But now that you bring it to my attention, of course, I'm going to go out there and get a sample of it. So thank you, Dave.
Of course.
So the first one that I want to talk about, for conflict of interest reasons, I just want to get it out of the way, but I also absolutely love this one. It is one of my favorites to wear in the autumn, and coincidentally, I started testing this one in the summer of 2019, perhaps if not even a little bit earlier than that, and it is by Navitus Parfums, the brand of which I am the creative director, and it's called Absolutio. Now, Absolutio translates to mercy or perfection, and I feel like in this fragrance, I am kind of at mercy of all of these gourmand ingredients. You have the toffee, you have the chocolate, you have the caramel, you have the cinnamon, you have the apple, you have this almond cherry accord going on in the opening. I feel like this is such a brilliant composition by Bertrand Duchaufour, and when I smelled it for the first time, I remember just loving it and being blown away by it. And we tweaked the formula a few times, but ultimately we came back to the original mod, which is the one that is housed in this bottle. I love wearing this one. I think it's a perfect autumn fragrance, and not only that, it's also one of my favorite gourmand fragrances because that is the topic of this video, of course. So Absolutio by Navitus Parfums.
And I have to say, Stephen, so I did purchase Absolutio, and it was one that I purchased late last year, right around the time that your fragrance line launched. And
thank you.
It quickly became one of my favorite gourmands of last year. It is incredibly well blended. It's a fantastic just a very seductive gourmand, and you can really pick out certain notes, but it's so expertly blended that it has a very high quality kind of characteristic about it. So it's the one that I really love.
Thank you so much, Dave. I really appreciate that. That means a lot.
So the number 4 next on my list is probably no surprise to a lot of you. I don't know if I have to spend a lot of time on this one, but some people have not smelled this one yet. This one comes from the house of Navitus Parfums Privé, and this one is Side Effect. So Side Effect was one that I didn't love right away. It's one of those gourmands that took me a little bit of time to get used to. Just like a person, I always say that fragrances have to be, sometime you have to warm up to them, just like a person. And that's totally okay. Not every fragrance will be love at first sniff, but this one definitely became a love at first sniff at some point. Yeah, so this one is all about the boozy tobacco and the rum with the vanilla and the cinnamon in the at least in the opening. And then I really get that cinnamon and that booze and that vanilla all the way through its lifespan. It never really truly goes away from me. This one is super seductive. It is incredibly alluring. It's almost elusive in the way that it acts on my skin, because sometimes I'll pick up certain notes like vanilla and then sometimes cinnamon, but I'm always getting a very boozy quality. It's almost like a boozy gourmand. It's polished, it's warm, it's cozy. The projection on this is fantastic. Its longevity, just like all Nishios, are extremely above average. It's just one that I love wearing. I wear it on date nights. I wear it even just walking around. I even wear this one on colder summer evenings just to kind of feel that coziness about it. This one is, I absolutely love it. So if you guys haven't smelled this one yet, check out Side Effect from Nishane Parfums.
Yeah, Side Effect is amazing. It just warms on the skin so nicely. And a lot of the descriptors that you gave for Velorum, like the word cozy, can also be applied to Side Effect. The rum, the vanilla, the cinnamon is just a perfect fragrance for the colder months. And so now that we are sort of easing into the autumn, it would be amazing to for somebody to at least either sample it or acquire a bottle, because it's a phenomenal fragrance. So I co-sign everything that you said.
Cool. That's all I care about.
So the next one on my list is Intoxicated by Kilian. And I think the name does justice in terms of what it smells like and how it's going to make you feel. Intoxicated is an intoxicating fragrance in the sense that it embodies a lot of those ingredients that we spoke about earlier. So it has that chocolatey appeal. There's a little bit of a vanilla warmth or richness in the base as well. I know this is a fragrance that often gets compared to Angelman by Thierry Mugler. This one, a lot of people will say, is like the niche version of that. And I know that Thierry Mugler, unfortunately, in recent years has been reformulated, and so it has lost a lot of its power and its prowess. So now what we're seeing is a niche version that lasts a very, very long time. Again, it's not 100% the same. It still does its own thing. It has a level of uniqueness, and some people actually prefer this one because they say that that tar note has been mitigated or even taken away completely. I love it. It warms up very nicely on the skin. For this one, and me, my nose at least, I know it probably has that ethyl maltyl thing going on in here, but it's all about the chocolate, and I can't get enough of this one. I know there are several other by Kilian fragrances that could have easily made this list, right, Dave?
Totally. Absolutely. Yeah.
But yeah, for a gourmand, Intoxicated is among my favorites. Love the single malts of the world. Love the apple brandies of the world. Noir aphrodisiac. These are all great fragrances, but I chose Intoxicated.
That is a great pick, Steve. And I have to say, if anyone out there who is a gourmand lover, especially if you love cardamom, I don't think you can get better than Intoxicated. You really can't. So the next one on my list is probably not going to be a surprise to many of you, or for those of you who watch my channel. You know how much I love Rouge Smoking. He's my favorite perfumer. And this one is one of my favorite gourmands of all time, and easily the best gourmand from the house of Rouge Smoking. This one is Sweetie Oud.
Oh man.
Yeah, this is one you have to get your nose on if you haven't. I mean, jeez. Okay.
I've tried it, so I know how good it is.
Yeah. I'm literally flabbergasted. I'm like starstruck smelling this fragrance. So this is a very unique gourmand because it's the only gourmand that has a very unique patisserie accord. If you've ever been to a kind of a French pastry or French bakery, you walk into it, even just walking by a French bakery and you're smelling the fresh baked goods and you're smelling that doughiness, this kind of has that similar patisserie accord, but there's a lot more going on. Yeah, there's a little bit of rose in there. There's definitely some vanilla. There's amber. There's almost like a chocolatey accord on my skin. There's Gaiac wood. I mean, there's oud listed in the notes here. I don't get any oud in this. If there is oud, it's very well blended and it's not something that sticks out in the skin. By no means is this an oud fragrance. So don't be misled by the oud in the title. It might be actually misnamed or mistitled by calling it an oud. There's some peribalsam, there's some juniper that jumps out at you in the base as it's drying down. There's a touch of cypriol that gives it a kind of a more of a camphorous feel. But all in all, this is a very amazingly beautiful blend of Gourmand, and it has excellent staying power. One that I really love is Sweetie Oud.
That's a fantastic fragrance. All three of the ones from that collection, I remember trying them for the first time at Oswald, and I fell in love with them. I'm like, wow. It just showcases the versatility of the brand and how different the fragrances smell from one another. Mm-hmm. And like you said, having that sort of doughy richness and that sweetness to it really makes the fragrance so unique and unlike anything else that I've tried before. And so that is a fantastic, fantastic selection. And you reminded me that I need to get a bottle for my collection. So hopefully I'll do that soon.
Sorry, Jen.
And no, it's all right. She deals with all of my purchases by now. Next one that I'm going to talk about does not, at least with the name, it doesn't help to establish any sort of narrative that leans in the gourmand direction. This one by Edition de Parfum Frederic Malle is called Musc Ravageur. And this is a fantastic fragrance by Maurice Roussel. And I have smelled him do something like this in similar fragrances, Latinum 18 by Le Labo being one of them. There's also one for Lempica, I believe it's called El de Lolita Lempica. I've actually had the opportunity to review that on my channel as well. But this one is such a polarizing fragrance, and it's one that has gotten spoken about so often in the past here in the fragrance community. It has that clove opening that some people say smells musky, some people say it might be a little bit off-putting, but it's such a unique fragrance. And I think Maurice Roussel has this ability to add this contrasting element to so many of his creations. Even if you think about New Harlem by Bond No. 9, it's that syrupy richness that you mentioned about before. It's almost like oozing, but he added lavender in there. So you take a fragrance that smells like a breakfast or at IHOP or something like that.
Right.
You add lavender, which is that contrasting element. I feel like that's what the clove is doing in here. You have the clove, you have the vanilla, you have those pleasant musks in the base. It's so rich and it's so sweet, and the tonka bean and the vanilla, and it's just an amazing fragrance. And this is actually my first bottle, which I pretty much used up, and I ended up purchasing a second bottle, which is about 30% of the way full. I love this one. I've been wearing this one for many, many years.
Yeah, I think Musc Ravageur is one of those very polarizing fragrances. Either you love it or you hate it. I don't really see much of a middle ground in Musc Ravageur. But for me, I've started to like this one a lot more in the last couple of years. When I first smelled it, I think it was at Nordstrom or Neiman Marcus. It was not a love. I was like, ugh, this is too much. This was too mature. And I think that was maybe 3 years ago when I kind of started getting into fougères, actually, when I started appreciating mature fragrances, masculine fragrances, or masculine meaty fragrances. And this one definitely grows on your skin as you start wearing it more and more. And like you said, that clove is very pronounced, but it's also well married and harmonized with a lot of other supporting characteristic notes that really help lift it up and give it much more body. And I think once you start smelling this over and over again, you start kind of conceptualizing what this fragrance is trying to tell you.
Absolutely right. Yep.
So the second to last one, or number 2 on my list, is going to come from my second favorite house. And this is probably, again, not a surprise to many of you. This one is Zerg Metallica. Ooh. And I really love this presentation. I mean, this is not just to say beautiful is kind of a top shelf word, but we all kind of throw around from time to time. But this is like a velvety, blood red, just gorgeous outlay here with this plaque. That's the contrast here. It just looks luxurious. I kind of want to just carry it around the street like, hey, look at what I got. But it's phenomenal. This one is easily one of the best gourmands I've ever smelled in my life. This is the most delicious, gooey Italian cookie in a bottle you will ever smell in your life. I was in Milan last summer, and I was with my twin brother and his wife, and they were going like crazy, doing everything under the sun. I'm like, screw you guys, I'm doing my own thing. I walked away, I did my own, I kind of walked into this little pastry or this bakery, and they were selling these Italian coffees and cookies. So I sat down and I had this really luscious, crumbly, delicious buttery cookie. And when I first smelled Italica, I'm like, wow, that is what this smells like, a really well-made Italian cookie. It's gooey, it's rich. It's all about the milky notes, that toffee, that creamy toffee with the vanilla. There's almost like a caramelic touch in here that gives it some depth and almost like this this second layer of the richness that you wouldn't get from the other three notes. Yeah, it's like you're almost like enslaved in this gourmand heaven as you wear this. It's really, you know what? Sorry, I have to say this.
There it goes. It's such an incredible fragrance. I mean, it's interesting how going through the list, we see a lot of fragrances with the inclusion of these gourmand ingredients, and some, I guess, rely on the amplification of some of these notes more than others. And so it's easy for somebody to say, okay, if you like chocolate, please go with this one. If you like vanilla, please go with this one. But then you also have some fragrances that are so well-rounded and they embody so many different gourmand elements. And I feel like Italica really does that with the caramel and the sweetness and that lusciousness. And like you said, almost like transporting you to, you said Milan, right? You visited Milan. So transporting you to that one shop that you visited in Milan and just, you know, commemorating that experience is really fantastic. So Italica is incredible. The next one that I want to talk about is one that I've had in my possession for, I guess, about a year now, since right around the time that it came out, or maybe it's been out a little bit longer than that. But I absolutely love this one as one of the more dusty, powdery vanilla fragrances out there. And it's by Nishane and it's called Ani. And I know you have experience with this one as well. I absolutely love it. Just a fantastic creation. I think it's by Cecile Zarokian, and that gorgeousness of the vanilla really enshrouds you and encapsulates your aura. And it has this ginger note in there as well. It has a blackcurrant note, if I'm remembering correctly. But I don't get so much of the spiciness and the fruitiness. It's really more so about that vanilla. But I can see how those other ingredients are really just helping to amplify the vanilla and almost serving as a pillow on which that vanilla is resting. And it's just such a beautifully done fragrance. And this is, if you're a fan of vanilla, I think this is a gourmand leopard string.
Totally agree. That is a very unique vanilla. I think there's so many, the market is so oversaturated with vanilla fragrances these days. This one for me is a standout for sure. What I love about it is it's wrapped around the top notes of that really bright, and I don't know if it's lemon or lime or it's orange, but there's a very like encapsulating, captivating citrus that hangs around that vanilla. So there's a sweetness that's paired with this tartness that I really love. So last but not least, my number one, what is my number one gourmand of all time? This one I picked up last year. I was very, very lucky to get a bottle of this one. This is very hard to find nowadays. This comes from the house of Zerg, another phenomenal Italian house. And this is part of their 1717 Stone Collection, but it is an exclusive to Fort Mason. This was launched in 2015 by Chris Maurice, and this is Symphonium. And the bottle is, I mean, just that ambery, dark hue that you get from the coloration of the juice itself, contrasted with that almost like cookie and cream stone, gives you almost a visualistic sense of this is a gourmand. Wow. It's almost, before you even smell it, it gives you a sense of this is going to be something sweet and delicious. And I really love it.
Wow.
So there's a bit of oud in here when you first spray in the top notes, and it's not a barnyard oud. It's slightly animalic, but it really is contrasted and playing off of that really juicy mandarin orange incredibly well. There's a candied Belgian chocolate that you get here that's enlivened with that oud and orange. I believe it's Thai or Lao oud, which I kind of like because those tend to be a little more on the creamy side, not super animalic. Yeah, but there's vanilla, there's chocolate, there's oud, there's orange. It's one of the most enthralling and just seductive yet completely addicting gourmand fragrances I've ever smelled. And the longevity on me is probably about 16 to 18 hours. It literally lasts me all day. Yeah, I actually smell it on sheets, clothing, days and days later. And it's a very well blended gourmand, but it's also to me very unique. It's not just about the vanilla or the citrus or the oud. It's about all those playing in a beautiful composition and a beautiful harmony together. It's almost telling you the story, which I really adore. And that's why it's my number one.
And that's the thing too, you can throw all of these sweet ingredients together, but just because you have one sweet on top of another, on top of another, doesn't necessarily mean it's going to create the optimum gourmand fragrance. Sometimes it is about utilizing that Laotian oud, and which I know Chris Maurice uses a lot. It is about structuring it appropriately so that you have these other ingredients that might not necessarily be gourmand ingredients, but it provides that really nice contrast so that you can appreciate the gourmand ingredients more. And the last one that I want to talk about is one that I discovered just this year. I know I'm a few years late to the party, but I love this one so much because I find it to be unique, yet also mildly reminiscent to fragrances that I've tried before. But it's such a unique take on some familiar elements and ones that I actually love from existing fragrances. So the fragrance is by BDK Parfums. It's a Parisian brand and it's called Rouge Smoking. And the first thing that caught my attention about this fragrance is just this red coloration in the bottle, the red liquid. And I said, uh-oh, what am I dealing with here? And I suppose initially I was a little bit turned off because I looked online. Everybody is saying it's a feminine fragrance, not in terms of, reviews or anything like that. The reviews are all validating that it's unisex, but in terms of its classification, it's marketed for women. So I said, okay, perhaps this is one that I shouldn't necessarily check out. Maybe I'll skip over it. I'm really glad I didn't skip over it and I actually pulled the trigger because I love this fragrance so much. It opens up with this beautiful, lush, and slightly tart cherry note in the opening. So it kind of has this cherry almond feel in the opening. As it starts to dry down, you have a little bit of that spicy tobacco-y thing going on in there that I also find in like Hemingway by Histoire de Parfum or Spice Bomb by Victor and Rolf. And then once you give it a chance to dry down even more, the base reminds me a little bit of the vanilla that you'll get in Tom Ford's Tobacco Vanille. So for me, it was almost like this amalgam of these three distinct elements that I love so much, but seeing it being put together in one fragrance, and I'm not even saying that that was the intention of the brand by any stretch of the imagination. That's just what my nose gets, and fragrance is so subjective that I guess people have to respect that. Everybody's going to get something different, as weird as it may sound, but I absolutely love Rouge Smoking by BDK. And just all three stages, all layers of the fragrance are phenomenal to me.
I would agree with you, Stephen, and everything you said. It's very well put.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's the reaction I got when I smelled it too. It's truly outstanding. I had a sample. Actually, I just smelled it a few weeks ago. I had a sample in a purchase of mine, and it was a dabber, and I had dabbed it on me. And sometimes you don't get the same reaction from a dabber as you do with a spray for some reason. Maybe it's just the projection, but when I had let it sit on my skin for a long enough time and I kind of dabbed it pretty vigorously, I smelled it. I'm like, wow, I never really owned any BDKs, let alone ever really heard of BDK perfumes, but that one was a complete standout and it's exceptionally well done. It's one that is very accessible, I think, for most people. And it's a great pick. So I can see why it's your number one for sure.
Thank you, Dave. I just think a lot of these BDK fragrances, they will speak to people. And there's, again, same thing can be said for Rouge Parfum and many of the other brands in this list. There's so much variety that, if you want something that's a little bit more balsamic and resinous, you might go with Wood Jasmine. If you want something that has a bit more of a muted sweetness, you might want to go with Gris Chanel. So they have so many fragrances that will really cater to people's personal tastes. It's just a matter of discovering the one that works for you. And Rouge Smoking, as somebody that has a sweet tooth or a sweet nose, I am gravitating towards Rouge Smoking. I think it's incredible. But again, all of the fragrances that you mentioned, Dave, sound incredible, even the ones that I haven't tried. So I'm looking forward to trying them, like the Symphonium. But even the ones that I have tried, like Metallica, and it just smells, and side effect, they smell fantastic. And so thank you so much for being on my channel again. Oh,
thank you so much for having me. It's truly a pleasure. And, it's so nice to be able to speak to someone who shares the same level of passion we do for this hobby of ours. So thank you, Stephen, so much for letting me just, spend this opportunity and this time with you. I really appreciate it.
Of course, Dave. Really, the pleasure is all mine. And once again, for everybody watching at home, like I said in the intro, Dave's information is going to be down below. He has his own channel. Definitely make sure to subscribe to him. Also, if you are new to this channel and you took something of value from this video, I would really appreciate it if you could support this channel as well by subscribing to it. All you have to do is click on that red button in the corner. And of course, while you're at it, please make sure to enable notifications by clicking on the bell icon so that when I do upload these fragrance-related videos, whether they be lists, just like like this, reviews or giveaways, it'll get delivered straight to your feed. You never need to worry about missing any of our future content. Thanks again for watching. Love you guys. We'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye guys.